Bum bum. Dee da da bo da dum ba dum. Done. Redirecting to YouTube. Hello, everyone, and welcome to Satsang. All right, very good. I'm hoping everyone can see me okay and that I'm not totally frozen. Oh, it appears as though I am. Okay. Let's see. Let's look on YouTube, see if anybody's here. It's really slow. All right. Can you all hear me? I have to wait till the chat arrives because I can't really see anything yet. Everything is very, very funky. Very, very slow today. I'm not really sure what's up. It's the same link I had, connection I had 2 weeks when I did it. Hi, Judy. Is the screen frozen a great deal, or is it just me? Just if you can chat that in there, that would be great. There's 15 people here, so if somebody would just let me know if you can hear me okay, and if the video is like okay. I think the video is actually kind of bad. I'm not sure. Screen is frozen. Here we go. Yeah. Yeah, it's frozen here too. I'm not exactly sure what the problem is. Can you hear me okay though? Hearing okay, yes. Okay. Choppy, freezing often. Not all the time. Okay. Frozen 75% of the time. I'm not quite sure what is happening. I can hear you. The video is frozen or moving very sporadically, right? Yep, it is for me too. And I'm not 100% sure why. I'm going to try a couple things here to see if I can fix it. And if I can, let me just try this. Let's see if this is better. It's a little darker, but let's see if this is better. I changed things up here a little bit, and let's see if it gets a little better. Picture's not all that great anyway. So yes, it's better, much better. Okay, it's beginning to move a little bit. All right, cool. Very cool. Well, at long last, welcome to Satsang. So glad you guys, I'm now in lip sync, yay. Get into my lip sync karaoke. Woo! Welcome everyone. Welcome to Satsang. And this opportunity to explore the deeper questions, and I invite your deepest questions. If you've got like 5 main questions on your mind, it's like a bunch of questions, sort them all out so that you come up with the one that's most important. Because what's really funny is people, we just do it. It's just the nature of people. It's what we do. That if you got several questions, while I'm answering one, your mind's going to want to be thinking about the next one. So by all means, try to get to the essence of what we're asking. And of course, at the essence of what we're asking is the deep desire to know who we are. That's the essence of everything. And so in satsang, the beautiful thing about satsang is it's not school. It's one of the big, wonderful things about it. It's not school. It's not where you go in order to learn more stuff. You come to satsang to have stuff taken away. We want to remove everything that isn't you, and which means every thought about yourself, every opinion you hold yourself, every judgment, your history, your memories, everything that ever happened to you, everything that ever will happen to you, is all just experience. It's all phenomenal. What we're interested in is that which remains when you've taken away absolutely everything that could possibly be taken away. What's left? Well, whatever that is you. Whatever that is. And I'm going to invite you in, while we're here in satsang, I'm going to invite you to discard every idea that you have about yourself. Everything that you've accumulated, everything everybody's told you, everything you've learned, everything you read in books, everything you thought you figured out for yourself. And just come to the simple and yet profound experience of simply being yourself, of simply being you right here and right now. Nothing extra, no great shows, no spectacle, no light show, nothing like that. Just the sheer presence of being. There's a famous saying in Zen, and most people don't know the story behind it. And a young monk went to his master and said that he was going to go study with this other teacher, a yogi, because he could do all sorts of great miracles. He could walk on water, he could levitate, he could do all sorts of miraculous things. And so the monk says, but what can you do? And the old Zen master says, when I'm hungry, I eat. When I'm tired, I sleep. Now, one could see that as being, yeah, well, everybody does that. But the thing about the Zen master is that when he does that, that's all he does. Just this. That's another beautiful phrase from Zen is just this. Nothing else. Our minds love to add all sorts of stuff on top of it. Love to create all sorts of ideas and concepts, and they're useful. Some are even beautiful. But they're all after the fact. Just this. Take away everything that can be taken away, right? Anything that's not you can be taken away, right? Anything can be lost. The entire world can collapse around you. You can lose everything in a split second. I told you about a friend of mine who lost everything in those wildfires in Northern California. He woke up in the middle of the night. It was way off in the distance. He didn't think anything of it. A few minutes later, he looked out the window, and it's like almost there. They actually got out of their house. They just kind of grabbed whatever was handy, got into their car, and they were like, seconds in front of the fire. And they lost everything. Boom, just like that. What remained? This is so key. What remains when all of your thoughts are gone, the story's gone, all the concepts are gone? What remains? And when I ask that question, what happens is your mind is going to try to add something to that. It's going to try to come up with some idea of what's left, but there won't be any ideas left. None. So what's here right this moment, right now, that isn't an idea? Are you a thought? Are you an idea? Or are you something that witnesses ideas? And what's that? What is that? This is the this is the wonder. This is the thing to ponder. If you can ponder the question like that, you are doing what Ramana Maharshi had asked to do, to ponder, who am I? But to not just look for another idea about yourself or an improved image of yourself or a better concept of yourself, but to really find the self, that which is there before anything else is formed. This is what we are actually doing. This is what every desire you have, every interest you have, everything you do, everything you've ever done in your life has actually been an attempt to find this out. We've sought answers in material security or in material prosperity. We've sought it in relationships. We've sought it in different states of consciousness. We've sought it everywhere, but without really realizing what we have been truly seeking. And what we've been truly seeking is ourselves completely unfiltered, exactly as we are. Well, Bill asked the question, how do I stay true to my nature when I'm experiencing physical and psychological pain from medications and immunotherapy treatment, i.e. fatigue, confusion, despondency, memory, difficulties? I don't know if that is you got something, had some kind of insight right there, or if it was just kind of a lament for that. Well, your nature is true. Your true nature remains your true nature no matter what you are experiencing. Because your true nature is whatever it is that is experiencing it. Now, I'm not saying that experiencing, the pain, both physical and psychological, and the stuff that results, there's the illness, right, which is difficult in itself, and then there's the cure, which is often worse than the illness. That's just the nature of our primitive modern medicine that we believe is so sophisticated. But all of that is being experienced by something. All of it is being experienced. What we need to become interested in is what's having the experience, because whatever that is obviously you, right? So look at as best you can in even the most difficult circumstances. Just let them be there. If there's pain, don't have any story about it. Just there's pain. That's the reason why Buddha put the Four Noble Truths, which is the first thing he taught, into the form he did. The first thing he said was the first of the Noble Truths. The Noble Truth means just like universal, crystal clear, unchanging. The first was, there is suffering. So there's no need to try to pretend, to push it away, to reframe it, to do anything, to make any story about it whatsoever. You are experiencing pain. Now, what happens if you just are with it? No thoughts, no attempt to get away from it. Because, when people think about being here and now, being in the now, they think of it, it's this wonderful space. Well, it is, but only if you're willing to completely be present with whatever is here in the now. And I don't mean our stories about what's now. This is terrible. How can anything, even a question, how do I stay in tune, stay true to my nature, right, is a story about what you're actually experiencing. There's the experience, and then your mind says, well, how can I possibly be true to my nature when I'm having this happen? Well, that's just the idea, isn't it? That's just a concept. That's just a thought form that's arising. And you don't need to believe it. And what would the experience be if that thought never occurred to you? If that thought never arose in your mind? You are your true nature. There's not a you and your true nature over here, and you have to find a way to stay true to it. There's only one, and that one is you. And now the mind say, well, if I knew that, then I wouldn't be experiencing this. Well, that's not true either. Buddha died of food poisoning, right? Christ, well, we all know how Christ met his end, or at least, at least went through that experience. Maybe he came back, maybe he didn't. I don't really know. It's not as important as he was completely surrendered to the now. He says, Father, into thy hands I commit my spirit. I mean, boom. I'm just letting this entire thing go. His prayer in the Garden of Gethsemane is extremely powerful. It says, if this cup can pass away from me, please take it. Nonetheless, not my will, but thine be done. He was struggling with not wanting to be present with what was there. He didn't want to be in this now. It was not pleasant. But he eventually completely yielded to it. That's the beauty of it. That's the beauty of Christ on the cross, is that total surrender to what is happening in this moment. And then the promises, of course, the resurrection from that moment to eternal life, that which is beyond all circumstances, beyond all experiences. The revelation of your true, immortal, originally innocent nature. Knowing that as your actual reality. The only way that happens is that our attention becomes rooted in the now without the story about the now. Because believe me, there's pain in the moment, of course, but there's the suffering in the moment is coming from the mind and its resistance to what is right now. And it's an attempt to reframe it, make a story about it, go anywhere, but just be with it. To just allow yourself to be present. That is like the baseline to the entire thing. It's certainly the baseline to everything I teach, the baseline of inner reconciliation. From there, you are in the position, the powerful position, to be able to reconcile all of these different energies, because there's no story anymore. You haven't taken sides. You are really present with what is. And I've seen miracles occur in that moment. I mean, not that you should expect that somehow it's going to reverse all the effects. It can, but that cannot be the motive. The motive cannot be about what you're going to get from it, because then being in the now and being in a spiritual practice becomes a means to an end rather than the end itself. And of course, now is all you have. If there is not peace in the now, there isn't peace at all. It's not sometime in the future, and somehow we're working on it and we're going to get there. It's now. Behold, now is the accepted time. Now is the time of salvation. Those are the words of Christ. Not somewhere later after you've gotten, mature enough, but right now. In the present moment, there really is peace, no matter what's going on. And that can be physical illness. It can be a difficult part of your life. It can be a broken heart. It can be grief. All of those can be there without suffering. I hope that helps you, Bill. Manx mix. It feels as if the story that keeps arising is useful as something to be able to see and realize that it's what I am not. Yeah. If you're seeing the story arise and recognize it as a story, it means you're not in it. right? A disidentification has already taken place. Because if you're identified with it, you can't see it. You know, when you're crazy, you don't know you're crazy. If you know you're crazy, you're not crazy. That actually is the way it works. The moment you see the story as a story, that is, and by story, that's a popular word. People are using it. Let me be clear about what I mean by that. Believing the thoughts about you are in fact the real you. That those thoughts about you are true. And believe it to the point where you actually identify with these various thought forms, take them on, give them the power of I, and start acting them out as if they're true. And it's an energy that if you don't see through it, you will simply believe this is what I am. The moment you see, wait a minute, that is just a thought form that I've picked up and believed isn't me. Even if it's still active, right? This is important. Even if it's still active in the system, and there's this, and all the feelings are still there, and all the impulse to identify is still there. No story whatsoever. The mere recognition that it is a thought form is step one. And now it's, oh, I see it now. So all of these things should go away. All of these symptoms should go away. All of these problems should go away. That's another thought form that is trying to grab you out of this moment because they haven't gone away. And now another thought form comes and says, well, you must not have it yet then. And boom, you're right back into it again, right? If you're seeing it, where are you looking from? You're obviously not looking from inside of it, because if you're inside of it, you can't see it, right? So if you are seeing it, the only way you can see something is if you stepped apart from it. You are now apart from that set of thought forms. And that's the first step. At that point, just be present in the now. If there's still all of this energy and chaos and stuff going on, fine. Okay, it's there. I'm seeing it. And that is all it takes. I am seeing it. Whatever I am is not in that mix. I don't know why I'm experiencing it. I don't actually even care. I'm experiencing it. So whatever I am is not that. This is so powerful if you see it. And when you do it in that context of being totally willing to be present with whatever is happening in the now, what's really happening, without any kind of commentary or narrative, you have stepped into real freedom. Real freedom. The freedom that will eventually, it won't matter to you anymore what's going on out here. And of course, the paradox is that when that happens, everything out here begins to shift. It begins to harmonize because it's not getting fed any fresh energy. It's not feeding on anything. So it gets weaker and weaker and weaker until it finally dissolves. Does that answer it for you, Hazel? Well, mix. Bill Kig made yes, thank you. Difference between disidentifying, disassociating, and transcending. Yes. Very good. Disassociating is very different. That really is an attempt to not be present. Yeah? And most psychological techniques and personal development techniques are nothing but disassociation. Trying to create some other model that's going to make this one go away, rather than just be here now, which is so incredibly simple. I mean, it's just, is it here? Okay, it's here. Does it hurt? Yes, it hurts. I don't need to know why. Don't need a story. I don't need to sit here and try to get out of it, right? Just, it's there. And in that, there's a wisdom that emerges that does lead you out of chronic pain and all sorts of different things. Of course, it can. Because that wisdom now, which is a much deeper intelligence than our minds, doesn't have anything interfering with it. It's not competing with some big story, right? It's very quiet. It's a still small voice of truth. It is not intrusive. It's not beating you on the head. Well, sometimes it does actually. So, Edita Arlano, when I try to find myself, it feels like my mind is exploding. Good. So don't use your mind. Yes. Notice what's seeing this exploding mind. Yeah, there can be tension. I remember experiencing that a lot at one point. I know other people have as well. Even like, third eye kind of thing, I guess people kind of doing this. Just see it. Yeah. When you're really grasp the question about who am I, you've gone beyond what the mind can do, but the habit of the mind of always trying to grasp, to grab, to explain, to understand, to find an answer is still there. And you can see how much tension that's actually caused you. It comes into that sense of, it's just going to explode. Well, right? Let it. Okay, explode. Call the bluff. It's not going to explode. It's not going to go anywhere. It's just trying to get your attention away from where you are focusing, which is on the truth that is beyond the mind. And it's clearly beyond the mind because who's witnessing it explode? Who's witnessing the thought that says it's going to explode or it feels like it's exploding? Actually, if you really look at it, none of those words really apply. It feels like it's exploding. It's like something in the future. All it means is you're feeling a certain intensity, right? So just be with that feeling of intensity. Nothing else. No elaboration needed, no explanation needed, right? It feels like no metaphors or similes needed. Just be with that feeling. And notice that you are aware of that feeling. This is actually important because there's really two parts to it. There's the awareness of what is happening, and then there's this awareness of being aware. You see that all of this is happening in front of this simple, but deeply profound, pure awareness. And you can actually just get in touch with that by just putting your attention inside your body. Notice that kind of like, we don't really have nerves inside the body. So you can kind of feel your stomach, but there's no nerves in the stomach. You can't actually feel the stomach. You can't feel your lungs. You can't feel your heart except for the motion that it makes. You feel the lungs as it pushes against the skin where there are skin inside of you, that whole cavity inside of you. the center of you is silent. It's empty. There's no sensation there. Feel that utter stillness that's inside of every single human being. It gives you a sense of what you are really like. I mean, this is very close to us. It's not completely who you are, but it's very close, isn't it? Just feel the presence of yourself. Because that's all there is to you. Everything else is added. You are not a thing. You are the consciousness that is aware of it. And this, of course, is why the mind gets all wrapped around the axle, because the mind can only deal with objects. Definable, clear, objects. This is a comb, this is a toothbrush, this is a shoe, this is a tree. Right? Clearly defined objects, that's all it can deal with. It cannot deal with something that is not an object. So the mind cannot know you. Do you understand that? The mind cannot know who you are. And you cannot know yourself through the mind, because all it will ever be is an image, a thought, an idea, a concept, usually related to the body. But you are not a thing. Consciousness is formless. Therefore, it cannot be conceived or even perceived by the mind or the senses. The formless is perceiving form. That formlessness is what you are. That is what is hearing my words. GP, that's from the Chosen One. How to receive an answer in meditation practice. Yeah, I have another question. They're different questions. I'll answer them separately. Stop seeking an answer. The desire for an answer is the mind trying to grab something that it can hold on to. And the mind is not something that, the mind is never the source of an answer. Once an answer is received, the mind can do stuff with it, can articulate it, can say things about it, can represent it in poetry or music, or it can just, do something with it, right? We can then put it into practice in practical ways, but your mind is not the source of anything. In meditation, simply be aware that there is a desire for an answer, but don't take ownership of it. Don't turn your meditation practice into a means of getting an answer to whatever it is that's there. Just let the desire be there and be aware of it, just like everything else. In meditation is simply being here. That's it. That's all it is. Just sit. I'm just here and I'm watching what is happening. And so there's a desire for an answer to a question, maybe even a deep need for it. If you begin to think about how to get an answer to that, or how to use meditation to get an answer to that, you are not meditating anymore. You're deliberating. You're seeking an answer. Simply allow that to be there. And the very same energy that inspired that desire, whatever it needs an answer to in the first place, will eventually deliver the fulfillment of that desire. But it will not come as a result of a personal effort on your part. Your whole job is to get out of the way of the flow of life. For every question, there is an answer. For every desire, there is a fulfillment. But they're not a personal possession that you have to take charge of and make happen. If you do, you will leave the present moment, at least in imagination, because you can't really leave it. Right? You will try to turn this, what's happening in this moment, into a means to an end. The result becomes more important than the now. You've just projected yourself in the future, and you have created suffering because you're not present anymore. You've gone unconscious. You've bought the farm, basically. Is that clear? Hello, Alessandra. Hello, Poppy. Let's see, anybody else has arrived here. John David says, drop language. Yep, language is all dualistic, languages of the mind. Drop language for the purposes of self-discovery. We're not just trying to put a word on the self. And then pick language back up again when you want to talk on YouTube, like I am. And then it's useful. Bill says, thank you, GP. Very clear, very helpful. Bless you. Oh, bless you, Bill. Chosen One then says, if you improve, develop your psychic abilities such as clairvoyance, clairsentience with the years of meditating, I've heard that many experienced meditators improve all of that. Yes, that stuff has got more sensitive until I realized that it really wasn't all that important, and that it was a nice place that the egoic sense of self could feed itself to make itself like the personal owner of certain kinds of psychic abilities. Psychic abilities will come and go. They're not important. Like the story I told in the beginning of the Zen monk, the young Zen monk who went to his master saying he'd met a new master. He was going to go study with him, this yogi who could meditate, who could walk on water and levitate and all these things. And then he asked the Zen master, and what can you do? To which the Zen master said, when I'm hungry, I eat. When I'm tired, I sleep. The power and the presence of right now is all that matters. That's all that's important. So yes, those things may improve. They may not. For many, they do not. They are not important. And if you start putting the emphasis there, you'll be very easily distracted. There are people who want to try to increase that. There's places you can go and people will teach you how to do that kind of stuff. Right? It is not a help if the main thrust of your intention is to know who you are. If you know who you are, you may have these abilities, you may not. But if you do, you'll be using them in a very, very different way than somebody who's just acquired some kind of psychic or esoteric ability. And you can. You're free to do that. There's all sorts of things you can do. So, yeah. Somebody put a link up here for a free dating site. This is interesting. This is the first time I've actually gotten spam on it's Satsang. So I suppose if it's useful to any of you, there it is. Funny. It just says, thank you, GP. Oh, you're welcome. Luca says, hello, GP. Are you familiar with the pointing experiments of Douglas Harding, the Headless Way? I surely am. And his descendant, Richard Lang. Yeah. Marvelous. Absolutely marvelous. And I've used them on occasion myself. So I highly recommend it. Besides Douglas Harding, well, he's no longer with us. The recordings of him, he's a marvelous speaker with a deep, very, very proper English accent. I mean, he's great. he's great. So I highly recommend it. And every now and then I use one of his pointing experiments to bring home that point. Matter of fact, people have even heard me talk about what do you look like from a distance of zero, which is kind of a spin on what on the approach that Douglas has. Yeah. So let's see. Taj, hello, Taj. I see my thoughts, but only after the thoughts, and it seems like it is from the brain. Non-dual students for years. I'm a non-dual student for years. I'm frustrated because it seems like non-duality is a trick of the mind brain. A lot of it is. A lot of it is, I mean, the non-dual rhetoric, non-dual jargon is extremely satisfying to the mind. It's very precise. It's very specialized. It can be a very satisfying thing. So I like to get a little bit more into the direct experience and not just talking about non-dual ideas. Mooji refers to it as, cappuccino awakening, sipping around, talking about non-dual concepts. It's not a concept. The mission is to go beyond concepts, and that means it has to be experienced yourself. Now, a thought happens, right? You experience the thought, and you don't experience the thought after it's gone. You said, but only after the thought. I think what you're saying is you realize that you've had a thought after the thought has occurred. But of course, because the thought is simply appearing out of nowhere, so you don't have any advance warning about it. It has a lifespan, and then it ends, and it's usually very, very short. Now, just notice that you are watching that come and go. Now, the thought that it came from the brain is completely unprovable. It's an idea. It's a concept, right? From the point of view of your experience, a thought happened, clearly defined, thought disappeared. That's all you know. The idea that it came from the brain is nothing but an idea, an assumption, right? They've taken the brain completely apart and nobody's found a thought. There's been no thought in there, right? So, but you know what? Even if the brain was producing the thoughts, what is it that's seeing the thoughts, that is experiencing the thoughts? There's the assumption, right, that goes with the basic assumption of the material universe of everything, that everything is made of matter, is that which is seeing the thought is also the brain. So somehow, magically, non-sentient, completely unconscious matter somehow becomes conscious. Now that's it. That's the entire assumption. Nobody's explained how. Nobody's explained why. They've got some fancy words like an emergent property of the complexity of matter. But there's no explanation for it. There's no organ that corresponds to it. There's no structure within the body. And it is qualitatively different than everything else in the universe. That's the facts. So the real study of non-duality is not a bunch of thoughts about that. It is going directly into your experience and not accepting anything other than what you're directly experiencing. This is really important. I experience thought. I experience myself. And I do not experience myself as the thought. I experience myself as something, whatever that might be, that sees a thought coming and sees a thought going, sees an experience come and an experience go. Something that is absolutely consistent. And that's my experience. It's not a thought. It's not an idea. It's not a non-dual concept. It's what I'm actually experiencing every single solitary moment. Does it arise from the brain? Where did the brain arise from? What is it that makes up the brain? What's actually happening here? If you look deep into the biology of it, I mean, basically, you'll see an atom. You can go deeper in the atoms. Let's start at the atoms. There's plenty underneath the atoms, which cluster together in molecules. Clustering mean there's huge, enormous amounts of space in between this. Just this space with stuff zipping around in it, right? Then those gather together in these things called proteins, and then those proteins become cells, and those cells become organs, and those organs become a body, and that body becomes different things, and the body eventually becomes a brain. And now there's all sorts of this activity in the brain, all of it. And you zoom down to that level, and there's just space, all this space and little things zipping around. Where's consciousness in any of that? Now, your experience of consciousness is the place to be looking. Now, when I look at the experience of consciousness, it bears no resemblance whatsoever to these material processes. And so I see that as an assumption, a very deeply held conviction that everything is made out of matter that is defiant of the fact that this doesn't fit that model. But to open up the possibility that consciousness, may be a substance in and of itself that does not exist in this universe, that is, as a form in this universe, does not exist in space, does not exist in time, is not subject to physics, is completely outside of the realm of what people, of what is generally believed. That is a real inquiry of non-duality. You'll hear lots of non-dual teachers saying, oh, there's nothing really here, nobody exists, nobody's doing anything anyway, I don't have to. That's all bullshit. Throw it out, it's useless. It's just the mind tripping on itself. There's grains of truth in it, and if you have one of those questions specifically you'd like to bring up, I'd be happy to explain what it's really referring to. It's not that it's completely untrue, it's just that it's missing. It's what happens when the mind usurps non-dual language to perpetuate the existence of an imaginary self. That's what most of that is. So that was from Taj. Thanks for this, GP. You're very welcome. I hope that answers your question. I go along with the Buddha and the lineage of Ramana and Papaji and Muji and Nisargadatta and that sort of thing, that it is experiential. And even Douglas Harding, that Luca pointed out, experiential. Rupert Spira, Adyashanti, experiential. Not, these aren't just nice ideas, right? Look for yourself, right? And just don't buy all the leading assumptions because they've got all sorts of authority behind them. that becomes your power, because a good friend of mine just wrote a book about the universe being a holographic image in the brain and the science that appears to substantiate that. And I ask him, I go, okay, but what's the brain then? That too is a hologram. I mean, they're trying to root the experience into some physical object. And I say, well, but the brain's in the hologram. What's generating the hologram? No, the brain is in the hologram. It's not generating, it's in it. I'm looking at it. So this idea that there's got to be some external objective material structure that's behind the whole thing is false. My experience says I don't see the evidence for it. I see an enormous belief in it, but I do not see any evidence for it. The evidence for consciousness and a consciousness only model of the universe to me is overwhelming. Just looking at the character of consciousness itself. And I have as much authority to make a statement like that as a guy with 10 PhDs because I'm consciousness. I'm talking about myself, right? So I have as much authority as anybody else does to talk about the nature of consciousness because I'm it, right? So I don't need a bunch of PhDs to talk about that. I don't need a bunch of PhDs to talk about my finger, right? So I don't need all of that stuff to talk about my consciousness, and I can have as much authority and much power about that as anyone else. So Taj says, thanks for answering. I'll sit with that. Good. I'm glad to hear that. Really glad to hear that. Correction, I'll sit with your answer. Good. Right. Just sit with yourself. Really, sit with just the pure, undeniable fact of your existence and become very curious. Don't buy anybody's theories about where that existence came from, where it is. Just go direct into your experience of existence itself. You're experiencing. And you are, of course, there's nobody more qualified to do that than you because it's you, right? Your existence. Just go there. That's where the answers are. Remington reported already. Remington, you get it back. What? Probably something about the spam on the link that could in fact be some kind of a virus or something. So Mark C says, thank you, GP, for your clarity. Namaste. You're welcome. Did I answer your question? I didn't see a question back there. It's just other people's questions. There. Okay, very good. Chosen One said, one time when I astral projected, I asked a spirit guide literally, how is this even possible? And it told me, don't you get it? We have our world like you have yours. Well, yeah, that's very possible. I mean, there could be all sorts of beings sitting in this room. Of course, it's not a room for them. It's a completely different thing. I mean, we really believe that material model that I've been ragging on about really believes this is it and everything is in relationship to that. I mean, why? There could be multiple things going on simultaneously because we just assume that space can contain, but it's like, no. Consciousness, people can be laying in bed together dreaming, right? And it could have been your wedding night, right? And it's been, like this great, wonderful lovemaking that went on for hours, and you fall asleep. And when you're in that sleep state, they don't exist. They're gone. Everything is gone. You're right next to each other, right? If consciousness is really the model and forming experience, there could be an infinite number of beings. Yeah, maybe sometimes we can go through a little port, kind of, it gets a little bit thin and we can see something else and have a bit of a conversation. If they're in their world and you're in yours, they're in the same boat we are. Maybe they're a little bit more advanced. They're in the same boat we are, right? If they're identified with form, no matter what their form is, they haven't gotten there yet. You're not a form. You are formless. And so the experience of astral projection is simply a switching of what's on the screen. You haven't gone anywhere. Chosen One says, I'm still amazed that there are other dimensions. Yeah, it blows the mind, because the mind really wants things to be the way it thinks it is. And they aren't. The way the mind believes things are is not what things are. The mind has created artificial blocks and limits. There are no limits. They really don't exist, except the ones we impose on ourselves through our beliefs. And at the essence of that belief is the belief that I am the body and I am made out of matter and I am limited. And it's not true. You're not the body. You are the consciousness that is aware of the body, and you're not the brain. You're the consciousness that is aware of the brain. So I'm pretty amazed about it all too. It's pretty cool stuff. It's really cool stuff. But make sure that when you grasp that and you take that in, you don't just make it a cool thing that there's other dimensions with other beings going on. You begin to take that home and just, well, what's the nature of my experience? Because maybe there are other dimensions going on. Maybe you're going to slip out of this one and into another one. Maybe this life ends, and right? Maybe you'll wake up and or you'll die, and actually it'll be like waking up, and you go, "Wow, that was a weird dream. What was that? We gotta remember," and then it'll fade off in a memory like it never ever happened, like most of our memories do, and most of our dreams do. No matter what the experience is, even right now, this entire thing you're experiencing with me could be a dream. In fact, you could be mad. You could be in an institution somewhere staring at a blank wall, yelling and screaming and thinking you're having this experience of wherever it is you happen to be. It's very difficult. It's impossible to say what is objectively real and what isn't, because it's all perception. But there's one thing you can be absolutely sure of, and that is that you are. Your existence is undeniable. Go to the one thing that cannot be questioned. And if you go there and be with that, the one thing that is undeniable, does not need anybody else to verify it. It is self-evident, clearly the one place that must be the source of all truth. Remington said, let me scroll back here, Remington. Oh, sorry, I didn't see it. Remington said, how do I align my inner purpose with my outer purpose? My inner growth is expanding rapidly, but my outer growth is stuck. Everything is lateral. Why is this presented to me? Because you need to learn patience. You need to learn how the inner purpose begins to expand into outer purpose. The question tells me that you've discovered these things inside. You're really growing, but you're frustrated with your life. You're frustrated with what is, what your experience is, right? You have to grow to the point where it's okay what's happening out here. You see, when inner growth takes place, it doesn't automatically expunge all of the traumas and vows and conditioned responses and all the stuff that has taken root in the system. I mean, you've been acting out and rehearsing, and you have well practiced being who you are not, feeling that way, thinking that way, acting that way. And when as it begins to dawn that you are more than that you are different than that, and that inner work, you can feel it growing, it's going to take some time for that to actually dispel all the rest. And when you start getting into a conflict with it, I feel stuck, and you start pushing against it, you're in fact stopping that colonization of the inner to the outer from happening, because you're in a fight with it. Don't fight it. Who cares? Are you growing? Are you realizing more peace, more lightness, more sense of expansiveness inwardly? Forget about the circumstances. You're not pursuing inner peace in order to have better circumstances. If you are creating immeasurable suffering for yourself. Inner peace is the reward. Inner growth is the reward. That's it. It's not about any of the stuff that happens out here. If it is, you will be finding yourself restless. It's not enough. I'm stuck. I got it. This doesn't work for me. It's all stories. It's all a story. There's nothing wrong with your circumstance. There's nothing wrong with what's happening out here. Nothing. The only issue you have is that you want it to be different. Hence you say, it's stuck. I can't make it different. Right? Which means you are not being present with what is. You're fighting with what is, and that's the source of suffering, and that's the perpetuation of the problem. Come back. Just come back. It's okay what's out here. It's not your job to change it. It's not your job to fix it. It's your job to discover who you are and be totally okay with what is going on in this moment, knowing full well that what is happening here is not the arbiter of my well-being. Is that answered for you, Remington? Thanks for answering. I'll sit with that. Hello from GP from Spain. Hello, Helen. Good to see you. That says, the brain is what causes all the mess and confusion. And no, our beliefs about the brain, the beliefs the belief that our existence depends upon a material structure. Forget the brain, right? I mean, nobody knows how it works. It's this massive stuff. There's all sorts of signals going back and forth. Things happen. Nobody really knows how it works. They've just kind of, scratched. So forget about that. But the brain becomes a nice object of the mind that it can attach to, talk about the brain, project all sorts of qualities on the brain, right? And so now the brain, there's this physical object you could take it and sit it somewhere, and then there's all the beliefs we have about it. Those beliefs are what create our experience, not the brain. Don't worry about the brain. Really, it's like a fingernail. It's not that important. Joe F. Is there really just one of us here? The one true reality? Yes. But that one is experiencing itself as many. And this is kind of the essential thing that is hard for the mind to grasp. Right? The one and the many are not two. That's the real meaning of non-duality. They're not two. If you, as I said at the very beginning of this, when you come into this place of just your being, you put away all the ideas, the stories, the concepts, the self-image, put all of that aside and just sit with the pure sense of being, the undeniable sense of being, the effortless sense of being. The mind will say, well, it's dependent upon the body. Well, maybe it is, maybe it isn't, but that's just an idea. Your experience is simply one of an effortless being, and you don't really know the cause of it. When you get to there, there's just that sense of being. It becomes really obvious that, take everybody that's on this call right now, there's quite a few of you. And if I asked you about your life, everybody's details would be different. If I asked everybody in this room to describe the same event we were all aware of, everybody would have a different explanation of that event. But when I ask you to just go to that place of just pure being, everybody experiences exactly the same thing. That is the true oneness. It's the true self. And that's the doorway by which you experientially see the reality that there's really only one. But that one expresses itself in countless numbers of forms. It sees itself as countless numbers of forms, different kinds of attributes and characteristics, and the infinite diversity of it is just extraordinary. Because the one, as one, there's nothing to experience. So it ponders its own nature, and its pondering, its self-image, is what we call all the dimensions and all the universes and all the forms. It is simply the one pondering and loving itself. Joe says, so there is only real peace, happiness in knowing yourself to be the only immortal that will ever exist. I'm always cautious to answer those questions because the mind cannot conceive of the oneness that I'm describing. And so when I say only one exists, it thinks of itself, nothing else. Lonely, bored, nothing to do, right? And it's not that. The oneness is the many, and the many is the one. They are not two. So it's not that you, the personal sense of I, GP, is the only immortal that will ever exist. The only immortal is expressing itself as GP, and as Joe, and as Taj, as is Hazel, as is Luca, as is SS, as is Taj, as is Helen. It's expressing itself as that. The mind has simply created an image of that expression and thinks that it is an independently functioning thing. That is what makes up the egoic mind. I am separate from the whole. And so when I say to that, there's only one, it thinks I'm only one, there's nothing else, it's only me, it's all me. Because it's looking at it through that filter of the egoic mind. Don't just stay away from that. You are not that. That's just an image being held. And just stay with that simple isness, beingness. And you'll notice that everything has that quality of beingness, doesn't it? I mean, in humans, it is this question of self-awareness. We are actually looking at ourselves. But that same sense of I am, that sense of beingness, it's in the dog, it's in the tree, it's in this headset that I'm wearing, it's in the shirt. Everything has the quality of being. That's how you begin to discover that this same essence that you know of is the essence of everything. And not just people or animals or plants. It's everything, it's the atom. The essential quality of the atom is it exists. It is the isness of it. And on the other side of that, in Buddhism, they also have the term of suchness. And so you're with the beingness of every tree, but every tree has its treeness. It has its essence of the tree. But it's all, it's all in this existence. It's all in that simple sense of being that we can all experience any moment. And of course, that the experience of that is meditation. That's what meditation is for. Max Mick says, talking to someone with hay fever, the thought arose that this is resistance being lived in the form of a story about pollen and sneezing. So the health issue masks what is really being resisted. Very good. I can feel that was a genuine inspiration coming to you and not an analysis. I've seen some charts, right? They have this symptom, then it's this energetic pattern and the like, which is, to me, as complicated and as if it was a medical doctor, if it's this symptom, you use this drug. The intuition of it, yeah. There's no rule of the universe that says that pollen should make you uncomfortable. That is a belief. It's believed by many, gets into the collective consciousness of humanity. It gets expressed in various forms, and people believe that it is because of the pollen. It isn't. It is because of our belief about the pollen that creates it. And as she saw, it can be resisting something within ourselves that then takes the form of resisting the pollen, reacting to the pollen. It's beautiful. I don't want to go into all the depths of that right now. So take the simplest thing about it. It is not the pollen that creates hay fever. It is the belief in the pollen that creates the experience of hay fever. If the belief goes away, so does the fever. The pollen's doing nothing. It's just being pollen. Hay fever is a story about the pollen. That story believed gets manifested as experience, as every story does. That's the nature of manifestation. Time check. Okay, cool. Sure. Click on you. Let's see. So, okay. Let's go back. Talking to someone. Okay. Joe says, so the thing with silence is that there's no middle ground. It's either silence or it's not, which includes a doer. No. The silence is always there. Things happen in the silence. From our perception, we say the silence is broken, but it's not really true any more than, having my hand here or a hand here is breaking space. The silence is never broken. You are the silence, right? So the middle ground is recognizing that that's what you are, and everything appears and disappears in it. So both the silence and what's happening are all together, are all appearing in the same consciousness, which is you. Lucas says, I can see that the world is contained in me, but why can't I know what is in other people's heads? It seems that their consciousness is different from mine. There is not only one consciousness. Confused. Okay. This is not, when I say something like the one expresses itself in the many, you can know the contents of other consciousness when you know your own, because you'll find that they are the same, and that there's a continuity, and that the wall between them does not really exist. The mind wants to know what's in other people's consciousness, other minds, for its own purposes. And while that's the case, that wall will remain quite solid because it's a protection against the egoic intrusions of the egoic mind. But when that's no longer the case, when you are rooted and established in that simple sense of being, I keep pointing you back to, the rest of this will open. But there'll be no need for it. You won't care if it's there or not, right? Because remember, the only reason we ask these questions is because we are craving a perpetual feeling of happiness and well-being. That's why we're doing it, right? Once that is established, which is what is in that simple sense of existence, which is the great I am, then all the rest of this won't matter. Those questions won't arise anymore. The question is, how am I expressing this happiness? Which won't even be a question. You'll just be doing it. Then you'll clearly see the one consciousness, because you'll know that you are it. And so that others are that as well, while at the same time maintaining an individuality, won't seem so crazy, won't seem so distant, won't seem so hard. Joe says, could you explain Krishnamurti's thought is time, time is thought? Yeah. Every time is a word that we created to represent simply the flow of change. So time is just a thought. It's an idea about change. It's taken on a meaning. We've made it mean like this river that is carrying events in it. There's no river. There's only a series of events. And so time becomes a thought about experience. So time is thought. Thought is time. Because time, like every other event, is simply one thing happening after another. That's all it is. And so we say, time, right? As if time is a thing. It's not a thing. There's simply a series of events. One thought, another thought, another thought, another thought, another thought. There's no time that's carrying thought along. There's only one thing, another thing, another thing, another thing. And we use time, which is simply trying to measure between these different things that are happening. Does that answer it for you, Joe? Lucas says, thank you. Yeah, you're welcome. Very, very welcome. Johanna, hello, Johanna. I can't stir my awakening because that would make the now into a means to an end. Absolutely. Thank you for that clarification, GP. Today, noticing outer silence around sounds and words. Such a powerful teacher. Thank you. Well, not me or the sounds, the silence around sound. If it's for me, then thank you. If not, yes, it is the silence that's actually doing the teaching. Yeah, this moment, the now is what's supposed to be. It's only our mind's disagreement with it. Every circumstance in your life would be utterly quiet and peaceful and calm and not a big deal for you, were it not for the story of our minds that says it should be something else. That's it. That is the cause of all suffering. I should be something else. I should be further along. I should be better. I should be enlightened by now. I should have 10 million bucks in the bank. I should be really successful in my career. I should have met my soulmate. All of those are what our minds have, the ideas that have gotten instilled in us as to what should be, which simply put us at war what is now, which never lets us be present here and makes everything we do a stepping stone to get there. And has anybody noticed we never actually get there? Because there is here. Discover it here. And you won't worry about there anymore. As a matter of fact, what is there? Another day. Remington says, yeah, things get nice when I have patience. When I choose to wait to infinity, things change rapidly. I'll wait. Very good. But don't even get into the waiting, because there's a very subtle, oh yeah, okay, I'm now doing this. It'll come, right? There's a very subtle casting happiness into the future in that, right? Are you seeing that? You're not waiting. No waiting. There's nothing to wait for. Christ said, behold, now, I think it was St. Paul, now is the time of salvation. Now. Right now. Drop all your arguments with what's right now, and you will experience eternity. That's not nice. That's not a bad deal. Yeah. Alessandra, advice requested. Teaching 2 to 5-year-old Spanish language, 2 to 5-year-olds, I guess, kids, Spanish through art, responding fabulously. Friday, a colleague teacher basically overrode my authority and gave her child an unfinished paper sword. We finished in the classroom. When I told her I would give it to him on Monday after I talked to him, she took the sword, said, "You're being ridiculous," in front of my class and another colleague, and stormed out. Later in the evening, she apologized on a text message. I deeply feel that her behavior was totally inappropriate and do not wish her child to participate in my class again. I feel that the child will be suffering the consequences of the parent's action, yet I feel that if a parent does not give me authority, I do not wish the responsibility. I feel so uncomfortable and upset. I need to go to that extreme of denying the child participating in my class. Okay, good. Let's just look at what happened. Somebody behaved in a way that, admittedly, given that you accurately described it, that was just inappropriate, right? Right. So there's that. Now, nobody's inappropriate behavior, even really horrible behavior, can create suffering for you. Only your story about that can create suffering. Only your thoughts about it can create suffering. The incident itself is always neutral. It just is what it is. So now I'm not saying you have to say, oh, okay, so I can just accept that it was okay that she was the way she, no. No. It's not appropriate. It was stupid. It was childish. God knows why she acted the way she did. Right? Who cares, right? So that was there, right? Or like, somebody cutting you off on the highway or something, right? They shouldn't have done that, right? There's the cutting off, and then there's they shouldn't have done that. This woman behaved the way she did, and then she shouldn't have done that. And then on it goes. And and I will not have the kid in my class. It's not appropriate having the kid in the class. None of that's needed, is it? Right? Will she be in the class? Who knows? Will the mother take her out? Who knows? If she comes back to the class, it will be a completely different deal, a different day, a different thing, a different everything. Okay? So there's this residual feeling in you that's going on. Now just say okay to that. Don't try to be spiritual now and, okay, I'm going to transcend it. None of that. Just what's here. There's a feeling running through your system. There's a resistance. There's a distaste. There's a not knowing what to do. What's the best way to handle it. Just let all of that be there. No story whatsoever. Whatever you're feeling, feel it. That's it. That's all you have to do, Alessandra. It's amazing. This is really amazing. That's all you have to do. Be with the feeling, the actual experience, without any thought forms laid on top of it, which she should have done. And anytime you hear the word in your mind, it's what should, that word should, you are clearly stepping into the thought forms about this moment, and you are being invited to leave the now and go into a dream world, basically, right? And that's what it means to be unconscious. Right? That's what unconsciousness is. Consciousness is when you are consciously aware of what's actually here right now. Unconscious is when you identify with the story about what's here and now. Right? So just let that feeling be there. Let it run through your whole system and watch what happens. Your mind will jump in because your mind wants to take a position, right? Of course, the mind wants to take a position because that strengthens the false sense of person. It strengthens the person, the false sense of who you are. It's defending somebody who doesn't actually exist because you're a being. You're just pure being. And it's not a problem for you. But that thought, that image we hold of ourselves, oh, it's a big problem. Oh, yeah, but what am I going to do? And all that word I, put all that aside. You don't need even the word I to be present with what is here. Right? No matter what it feels like. You don't even say, I'm feeling this. Just, it's here. I'm here. See what happens when Sandra, I'm really, really anxious to hear what you have to say about that. Rink says, thanks for answering. I sometimes ponder how things would be more wonderful if everything shifted the way I want. That is the egoic mind to a T. How wonderful everything would be if it would just go the way I want it to. And now there's this ongoing fight and argument with life. It's never going to go the way the ego wants it to go. It's going to go the way it goes. Harmonize with it. It's the right way for it to go. The egoic mind doesn't have a clue. It's so narrow. It's so, all it wants to do is make the little ego that has been killing your life feel a little better. That's it. That's its whole purpose. Because you can't even perpetuate it because it's not even a real thing. It's just a thought. Beautiful. 2:21. Okay, I got another 10 minutes here. That says, I feel that the brain is built for survival. That's why it can't stand being in what is. The entire mechanism of form is about survival, but consciousness isn't. And the brain can't stand the now because it isn't in the now, right? It's an image. That's all it is. There's nothing really there. Even if you look at the physical object, it's constantly turning over. Cells dying, being reborn, cells dying, being reborn. There's nothing substantial there. There's nothing consistent, right? So being and what is you. Only you can do it. Nothing else can do it. Only you. So there's no need to put so much emphasis on the brain, or even on the functions of the mind. Just see them and then ask, what is seeing them? What is that? And then look at your own experience to validate that and to discover the answer. Can you talk about what place communication has in human existence? Well, this Satsang is communication, right? And of course, that is the powerful use of language and the mind and words and all of that, right? When the words and the thoughts and the ideas get taken for being the thing itself rather than just the means of expressing it, we get stuck in it. Otherwise, we're talking about everything I'm telling you right now, talking about the beingness, right? It's not in a word. I could use any word, right? I could use any word. I could make up a sound, right? But the power of the language is that I use the words to point you towards the actual thing itself. Right? I can say the word car and we know what we're talking about, right? Because it points to something that's actually very real and we can identify with. When I talk about the self or pure consciousness, I'm doing the same thing. I'm pointing you towards something that really is there, but you need to see for yourself. And all the words are to be used as pointers in order to keep you from being distracted. So, the self. And now it gets this idea of the self. I go, no, it's not the idea of the self. It's you. What you experience as yourself. Chosen One says, GP, is there power in semen retention? Seems like whenever I hold my life force, people seem to respect me more, and life seems to flow better. Meditation plus semen retention equals God mode. anytime you can exercise authority over the various aspects of your life, be able to choose rather than just react, you are increasing your authority and your power. I mean, in tantric practices, which are more, in this case, I'm just talking about, in this case, I'll just talk about the tantric sexual practices. There's also, I mean, tantra is like, that's a tiny part of it. It's way, way, way more than that. But the idea is that the sex act is used in the service of intimacy and connection and communication. And the more there is of that, and the less the drive, the goal-oriented drive to get off, to orgasm, the more spiritual power is enhanced, because now the energy of the system is being put to the service of the higher sense of self. That's what Tantra is all about. Not just about sex, but every aspect of your life. Put that to the higher sense. When you're driving your car, put that. This is an expression of the one. This is a manifestation of intelligence. This is a manifestation of the functioning of the system that I'm going to get out of the way, and I'm going to let it do the job that it was meant to do. All of that compounds and gives that sense that you're talking about, getting into that mode. That particular one, again, when we try to do these techniques to try to get some kind of benefit from it, right? It becomes goal-oriented. Ultimate of Tantra is there is no goal, just presence. Just be here in this moment. Then there's no goal orienting, because goal always in the future. And if you're in the future, in the present is suffering. If you're in the present, without goals, without a future, there's no suffering. This is the bliss. This is the ananda of life. And so that's the purpose, to put it, not as a means to an end. Always be careful with any of these techniques, because that's what happened with a lot of these techniques when they made it over to the West. They got taken out of the context of the East, which understood this. And so yoga got reduced to exercises instead of a path to enlightenment. Most people know there's actually 6 or 8 paths to yoga, 8 different forms of it, right? But the only one we know about here is hatha. It was reduced. It fit into the context of the Western mind. Same thing is true of tantra. It became reduced to sexuality when it is a path to self-realization and the embodiment of self-realization in a life. So, meditation plus seems, yeah, okay, got it. Hope that answers it for you. SS, everything is as it is. Yep, the mind just rejects and creates unnecessary objections. Nothing can be changed. Human relationships are the cause of the human suffering. No, actually they're not. Yeah, our beliefs about relationships are actually an enhancement to humanity, and if done properly, can be a beautiful vehicle for both the path of awakening and also post-awakening, a practice of implementing into your life the experience of awakening. Pam says, thanks so much for tonight. You've answered questions I didn't even know I had. That's wonderful. Judy says, I'm with you, Pam. Thanks, G, and everyone who asked questions. Victor, thank you for another great satsang, GP. Mank says, brilliant. Thank you, GP, and everyone. Chosen One says, thank you, GP, for your answer. Oh, thank you all. Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. Somebody's got to run about. I haven't seen that movie, Joe, so I'm not really much for movies these days. I used to be a big fan. My son thought it was great. My friends thought it was great, but I haven't seen it. So, Ishta says, "May your feet walk softly upon the earth." Thank you, everybody. Thank you for being here. I may not be having a live satsang next week because I think I'm going to be traveling on Sunday. And it depends on when I get to Phoenix. I'm going to be visiting my other son before I go back to New York. And thank you for asking earlier about my family, Judy. Everything is fine. I had a couple of emergencies I had to deal with, but everything is fine now. So thank you all. Thank you mostly for just being willing to show up and ask these deep questions and to allow me to give my perspective on it. I don't want to add anything to you, put any knowledge in your head. It's always an invitation to explore. It's always an invitation for you to look within yourself and discover for yourself. That is when it matters. I'm not in the business of handing out answers per se. If you notice, all of my answers are always pointing back to something very fundamental, and that is our primary experience is consciousness. If you look closely, it's in every other experience we have. Without consciousness, you can't experience anything else, right? So no matter how diverse the experience that we have is, the consciousness of experiencing is essential to all of it. To me, that means that is the most important thing to be curious about, to be looking at. And because it is your experience, direct, unfiltered, unbuffered, you are the number one authority to determine the nature of consciousness. What a wonderful, wonderful power that is. So thank you all. Till next week. Namaste.